Hey guys, Dr. Islam here, your poop guru. So today I thought I'd try something different. I've seen other YouTubers do this, including Dr. Mike, Dr. Mama, Dr. Jones, and I'm like, man, if they can do it, I can do it. So I'm going to Google the most common questions people have about poop. Yes, you are wondering if a poop doctor can answer poop questions. Well, this video is for you, and let's see exactly what people are wondering when it comes to their poop. So I got my incognito Google browser. So why does poop smell? Well, poop doesn't smell good because it's full of crap. Just keep that in mind. But poop is and it shouldn't smell good, guys. You don't want it to smell good because I don't think we want to bottle it up as perfume. But poop is just basically, it's waste. It's exactly what it is. So it's things that your body doesn't need. Whether it's sulfur compounds, it's dead bacteria, it's things you haven't eaten, and all that stuff, that waste that you don't need, that causes it to smell bad. Now there's a lot of bacteria in poop that can cause it to smell bad as well. And a lot of the foods that we don't digest, things like sulfur compounds, like I mentioned before, for some people it could be dairy, for some people it could be certain carbohydrates, maybe it could also be certain sugars like sorbitol. Those are things that are not easily digestible, and that can make poop smell bad as well. It's just full of crap, just things that we just don't typically need. Why does poop float? Oh, great question. So most of the poops that we have, we wanted to kind of go into that toilet and splash and go down to the bottom and usually sink to the bottom. But there's some poop that does float. It could be a number of different things. It could be due to lots of fiber. There may be excess fiber in your stool. Sometimes it could actually be fat in the stool as well. So sometimes if you can't absorb fat or you have too much fat in your stool, you can also see oil on your bowel movements as well. That can make it more difficult to flush. It can make it sticky on that side. Sometimes you have to flush it multiple times for things to go down. And that can be a reason why your stool will float, just that oil that's in your stool. Why does poop turn green? Well, it can turn green for a number of different reasons. Number one, if you have something green to eat, whether it's lettuce, broccoli, kale, that's going to turn it green. If you have food coloring that's green, that's going to make it green as well. But sometimes it can turn green because it can actually bypass the bile and the gallbladder. So the bile and the gallbladder are organs and substances that help turn the poop brown. And sometimes if you have a gallbladder that's gone, or you have fast transit stool, which means that food goes through the GI tract very, very quickly, that can cause it to turn green as well. So that's why it turns green. Green's very normal, nothing to worry about. If you got a green poo, not a big deal. It's perfectly fine, it's perfectly normal. Honestly, just know that your stool turned green for some reason, not a big deal. Oh, why does pooping feel so good? Oh, it feels so good. Well, a number of different reasons. Number one is that you have a lot of nerves in your bottom, in your rectum. This is why a lot of people who have hemorrhoids can have a lot of pain. Also, if you have a tear in the rectum called a fissure, that can cause a lot of pain to occur. But your rectum is this one big vault, and that's the main function of the rectum, is just to hold stuff that's there. Now, as it's holding more and more things, you have more and more pressure on that bottom. That bottom pressure, it just doesn't feel good. All those nerves that are there are wanting to just relax. It's like having a muscle, like your guns that are just contracting all the time. That's exactly what's going on inside that rectum. So as soon as your muscle relaxes, as soon as the sphincter, called the external anal sphincter, which is the muscle that keeps the rectum closed, relaxes, it's as if everything in your rectum just relaxes and things just pass through. And as you're passing through, you just all of a sudden have this relief of that tension that's in that bottom. That's why pooping feels so good, guys. That's why it's great to poop. Why does poop change color? Well, a lot of different reasons why it can change color. It can be due to what you eat, maybe it's certain medications that you're on, maybe it's the problem with digestion. But the two colors you have to be aware of that are not normal, because most of the time changing of the color of your stool is very normal, is black stools and red stools. If you have black stool, especially if they're tarry, that could mean you could have a bleeding ulcer in your stomach that needs to be investigated. And red stools, unless you're drinking some sort of red dye or drinking some sort of red drink or maybe eating beets, that could be, in fact, that most likely is a sign of blood. Those two things, black stools and red stools are never normal, and those are things that need to be investigated no matter what. Don't just blow those off. Most of the other colors, brown, green, yellow, those are usually within the normal spectrum. How does poop form? Well, it forms because as your body is ingesting food and it goes from the stomach, it goes into the small intestine. In the small intestine, your body absorbs a lot of the material that it needs to do its normal everyday process, whether it's absorbing fats, absorbing vitamins, absorbing carbohydrates, and absorbing water. And everything it doesn't need, or things that don't need to be absorbed, or things that can't be absorbed, stay in the small intestine, and it goes throughout the whole small intestine, eventually hits the colon. Now in the colon is where you have the vast majority of water being absorbed. So most of the water that you have inside your stool in your body will get absorbed in the colon. And everything else that isn't needed, items that you don't need, substances that you don't need, things you can't digest, goes into the colon, eventually will end up in the rectum, which is the very bottom part of the rectum, and eventually you'll poop it all out. How does poop taste? I have no idea. I don't want to know. I hope you don't want to know. My gosh, I cannot believe people are actually Googling this question. Oh my gosh. I am sorry. I'm not going to try and experiment that. I'm not going to even try and know. Oh man. If you know how poop tastes, guys, please don't do that anymore. That is not a good thing to do. How does poop come out? Very good question. So you actually have a number of muscles and nerves in your bottom called in the rectum, which is the very bottom part of your colon. And so what basically happens is that you have what's called the external anal sphincter, which is a sphincter that's always contracting when you're at rest. This prevents you from pooping whenever you're doing normal activities. You also have a muscle called the puborectalis muscle, which is a muscle that actually helps to keep the rectum at an angle so you don't poop all the time. Whenever you feel the urge to poop, a couple things happen. Number one is that you actually contract that puborectalis muscle. So instead of being at an angle, your rectum turns into a slide, so things just slide on through. But in addition, you actually relax the external anal sphincter and you contract the internal anal sphincter. And by doing this, it allows poo to go through, then you have your doo-doo. Boom! What a great rhyme. Yes, yes. How does poop get made? Well, I think we talked about that. How does poop turn brown? Very good question. So the reason it's brown is a lot of the bile and bacteria that's in the stool is actually brown itself. And this is why whenever you have a brown stool, it's just an excess of bile, an excess of another substance called heme, which is part of your blood, and all the other things that you don't need inside your stool. So let's see, once again, what does poop taste like? I have no idea why people are asking that question. That literally grosses me out. I'm a GI doctor, I do this all the time. I smell all sorts of things. I don't know why people want to know what it tastes. What does pooping blood mean? Okay, great question. So, whenever you're pooping blood, number one, that is never normal. Don't assume it's normal. Don't assume it's a hemorrhoid. Don't assume it's nothing. But there are a lot of different reasons why people can poop blood. The most common reason is just a hemorrhoid. A hemorrhoid is a dilated vein in the rectum that can come from constipation, straining, sitting for a long time, doing heavy squats, or having a lot of pressure that's there. Pregnancy can cause hemorrhoids to occur. And then sometimes those hemorrhoids can burst and cause bleeding. Another common cause for pooping blood is what's called an anal fissure, which is a tear in the rectum. It's a tear in one of the rectum muscles. This can present as bleeding, but also pretty severe pain that's there as well. Another reason to poop blood is actually an ulcer. There could be an ulcer within the rectal wall, either from chronic constipation, or maybe there's a trauma in that area that can cause bleeding to occur. Polyps, which are precancerous growths, can also cause bleeding. And the thing that we always worry about is cancer. Colon cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death in the United States. And it can present in a lot of different ways. New change in bowel habits, severe abdominal pain, weight loss. But one of the more common symptoms of colon cancer is frank bleeding, just pooping out blood. Even just a little bit of blood can be a sign of colon cancer. This is why those of us who specialize in the poop field are really cognizant of the fact that if you're pooping blood, we want to find out why. Even if you're young, even if you have no other symptoms, I can't tell you the number of people who I've diagnosed with colon cancer because they had just intermittent bleeding. Even young people, the occasional bleeding blew it off and ended up having cancer. So if you're pooping blood, that's never normal. Does poop float? Well, sometimes it does, but most of the time it just sinks to the bottom. Does poop have DNA? I don't think so, because if it had DNA, it would mean it's alive, and that'd be really weird to have an alive poo. Just imagine that. You're just pooping, and all of a sudden you look down, hey, Mr. Poo. Whoa, you are big. Yes, you are alive. That would be a very awkward conversation to have. Does poop cause pink eye? No. I don't see why it would. Does poop taste good? Once again, guys, why are you Googling or wondering about poop taste? It makes no sense whatsoever. Does poop have bacteria? Yes, it actually does. So poop does have bacteria. So it actually has a lot of dead bacteria that's there, bacteria that's not alive, and actually the bacteria in poo can actually be used to help treat patients. It's actually called a fecal microbial transplant, or an FMT. And we do this for patients who have a lot of different conditions, the main condition being C. diff, or C. diff colitis, or C. diff diarrhea, which is a really bad diarrhea infection caused by a bacteria they can get from either taking antibiotics, being in nursing homes, or being in hospitals. And we have medications to treat this, but for a lot of people, they need what's called a fecal transplant, where literally, yes, we put somebody else's poo inside the person who's sick. And this actually has a 90% cure rate. And this is one of the reasons why we think that the bacteria in our stool or in our gut microbiome can be a way to help treat people just like medicines. And there are other conditions in which we're testing this theory out. So what are poop cramps? Okay, it's a very good question. So a lot of people have cramping when it comes to pooping. Pretty common condition. It's usually associated with a condition called IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome. What happens is that the pressure in your colon for some people can be very high, or they can feel that pressure a lot more than people who don't have IBS. So the best analogy I give my patients is like having the radio on but the volume turned way up. Do people still have radios? I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. So let's say it's like your iPhone. The iPhone is the volume's turned way up, and so what I may feel is just not a big deal, some people can feel that as severe cramping, and that cramping usually gets better if you have a bowel movement. It's very typical for a condition called IBS. What are poop pills? So yes, there actually are pills that are out there that we can use to help transplant somebody else's stool into you. It's the same thing as a fecal microbial transplant, except for instead of using a colonoscope, which is a small little camera that we actually put in your bottom to insert the stool, people can actually, yes, get poop pills and do this. Guys, if you are thinking about doing a fecal transplant at home, don't do it. Have the experts talk to you about it. There are a lot of people who have these poop kits at home. It doesn't work. There's no data for this, and it's not going to treat a condition that you think you may have. Guys, don't do it. Please, please, please don't do it. So what are poop worms? Oh, okay, good. I like this one. So there are certain conditions in which actually you may actually have worms, pinworms. You may have traveled to a place, maybe overseas, in which you get a parasite infection, and actually that parasite can actually cause worms to develop inside your body, and actually those worms can actually come out of your bottom. Now I've diagnosed plenty of patients with parasites by actually seeing those parasites inside the colon. Yes, one of the weird things that I do, I see parasites in your butt. It's what I do, guys. Somebody's got to do it. It's what I do. How is poop supposed to look like? So we use a scale called the Bristol stool scale. We actually have pictures. Yes, in GI, we have pictures. And on these pictures, it tells us exactly what type of stool you want to have. And we have a grade from 1 to 7, with 1 being very hard stool and 7 being very watery stools. The perfect poo, the golden poo, the best poo that's out there is Bristol stool number 4, which is pretty much like the Greg Louganis. Do you guys know who that is? He was an Olympic swimmer who had such amazing dives that he had very little splash. And that's the type of poo that we want. We want number 4, very little splash, all one single poo, all brown. That is the golden poo. And that's kind of the poo that we measure all other poos by. The Michael Jordan of poos, the Tiger Woods of poos, whatever analogy you want, that is the magical poo that we want you to have if you can. Now, there may be some people who can do that on a daily basis. They are wonderful people. They are amazing people, but that's okay if you don't have the Greg Louganis of poos, the most amazing poos. Because sometimes your poos may change. It may change within an hour, may change within a day, may change in a couple of days, who knows? And that's perfectly fine because that can be perfectly normal for a lot of people. So why does my poo smell sweet? Ugh, oh my gosh, I don't know about that. Why does my poo smell like eggs? Well, I can probably tell you, maybe you ate eggs. That smell that can come from eating that egg, that kind of that sulfur smell is actually from sulfur. And a lot of people who can't digest eggs have that bad smell to it. It happens sometimes, guys. It's what it is. I want to thank you guys for watching this video as I was Googling different poop terms. Let me know in the comments, is there a video or a term you want me to Google? Let me know down below. But guys, thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you guys on future videos. Stay happy and stay healthy. Why we have things like, you know, I can't speak today. So that's why poop that's why poop smells bad. It could actually be fat in the stool. Just don't even worry about it. Just know that your pool. Also, if you have a tear in the rectum, called a It's as if your whole muscle in your it's as if everything in your rectum just relaxes and things can just, God, I can't speak today. But whoops.